I got my glasses on today for this scholarly video. Hey everyone! So today's video is about how I studied for my SAT chemistry subject test, and more specifically how I got an 800 on it and how you can too. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to say that I feel like I'm kind of a good candidate to make this video because I am not at all a chemistry whiz or a chemistry genius. So I took AP Chemistry, the class, right before I took my SAT chemistry subject test. But that class wasn't just, a breeze for me. Like, I definitely sometimes did pretty poorly on tests. So I just feel like the fact that I was able to study for the SAT chemistry subject test and even get a perfect score on it just goes to show that you all watching can do it too, okay? All of College Board's tests are completely trainable, completely studyable. So just make sure that you have like a growth mindset about it. And even if when you first start studying for these tests, you don't get the scores that you maybe want, don't get discouraged. If you have a good mindset, then I am so confident that you all can do amazing on this test. So you got it. Okay, so for the first part of this video, we're going to be talking about the test format for the SAT chemistry subject test. And just so you know, I'll be looking down a little bit throughout the video as I'm looking through my notes. Each SAT chemistry test is 85 questions and you have 1 hour. On the test, there are 3 types of questions that you're going to see. So the first type of question is matching. So in these questions, you'll get 5 lettered choices, and these choices might be graphs, statements, pictures, equations, a variety of things. And what you're going to do is you're going to read through the questions and match the choices to the questions, and each choice can be used once or more than once or not at all. So that's the first type of question. So the next format of questions is the true, false, and relationship analysis questions. So for this type of question, you'll see statement 1, and then you'll see because, and then you'll see statement 2. This question is a 3-part question because your job is to say whether statement 1 is true or false, whether statement 2 is true or false, and then whether statement 1 is explained by statement 2. So this is an example question from one of the official College Board practice tests. So statement 1 says that atoms of different elements can have the same mass number. Statement 2 says atoms of each element have a characteristic number of protons in the nucleus. And hopefully you can see that statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true. However, statement 2 is not a direct explanation for statement 1. So in this scenario, you would not bubble in the CE, which stands for correct explanation. Alright, so finally, the third and final type of questions that you'll encounter on this test are just general multiple choice 5-answer question types. So those are pretty much just your standard multiple choice questions. Okay, so now on to scoring. So for chemistry, compared to the other subject tests, I think that it's pretty difficult to get an 800 just because the curve is such that you have to get almost all of the questions right in order to get an 800. So I can find links that describe the curve and link them in the description box below, but I believe it's kind of you can skip around 5 or so questions if you get all the rest of them right and still get an 800. But just to be safe, I would definitely recommend that you just aim for perfection. While you're studying for the test, don't not review a certain topic. I don't know if you all are familiar with Murphy's Law, but it basically says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I had a high school teacher who used to talk about Murphy's Law, and he was like, anything that you don't review will show up on the test. Just try to be as prepared as possible. And while you're taking the test, try your very best to answer all the questions you can. If you are really completely unsure about a question, I think it's fine to skip it. But yeah, just use your skips sparingly because you don't have very many for the chemistry subject test. Alright, so now we're going to move on to how to study for the SAT chemistry test. So first of all, I'll talk about the materials and the resources that I used. So first and foremost, I cannot recommend enough using official College Board practice resources. Honestly, for any test that you're studying for, whether it's the SAT, PSAT, SAT subject tests, I think that the official College Board practice tests are the closest to what you'll see on test day. So just make sure that you're doing every single College Board official practice test that you can get your hands on. So sometimes if you just Google free College Board SAT practice tests, they'll come up. So you can try that with chemistry. I think the College Board website has some free SAT chemistry questions that you can practice that are pretty much the ones that you'll see on test day. And then Khan Academy is also a really great resource to explain any questions or concepts that you're unsure about, because Khan Academy and College Board do have like a partnership. So Khan Academy is pretty much like as close as you'll get to an official College Board format. College Board sells an official College Board SAT chemistry prep book, and I believe it comes with 2 SAT chemistry tests, and I use that. I bought that. I loved it. Definitely recommend. It's very similar to what you'll see on test day, but I can't find that book right now, so I'll just like insert a picture of it right here. So another book that I use is this big guy right here. Look at how thick he is. So this book has a practice test for every single SAT subject test, and I used this so much when I was studying for my standardized tests throughout high school. So this only has 1 SAT chemistry practice test, but if you can get your hands on this, I don't really know where we got this from, but it was in my house when I was studying for standardized tests. So if you can get your hands on this, I would recommend it, because the SAT chemistry test that's in here, I remember, is different from the ones that are in the other SAT chemistry specific prep book. And actually, I don't really have a need for this book anymore, so I'm probably going to be selling it very soon. So if any of you watching are interested in purchasing this book, just like leave a comment down below, or DM me, or email me, or whatever, and we can definitely work something out. I'd love to give this a new home. I didn't write in it at all, so yeah, just let me know if you feel like you could benefit from this. All right, and then the last prep book that I used was this Barron's SAT chemistry book. So this was so helpful to me while I was studying. I've tried to use Barron's for other like standardized tests before, and sometimes I didn't really like Barron's. For example, I took the SAT Math Level 2 subject test, and I tried to use Barron's for that, and I didn't really like it. I felt like it was a little bit too difficult for the test, and some of the concepts in the Barron's book just like weren't really on the test. But for chemistry, I found it extremely helpful, and I definitely recommend it. So I will say that Barron's tends to go a little bit more in depth than you need sometimes for the actual SAT like test. But I mean, I think it's better to be over prepared rather than under prepared. And overall, I think the tests included in this book were quite accurate to the actual College Board test. And this particular book comes with 4 practice tests and then also 2 online tests. So Barron's has like practice tests, but they also have review material at the beginning of the book, and I felt like the review material was just super like thorough and comprehensive. So, you know, if you don't want to read your entire like chemistry textbook that you use for class again, you can just read through this and it'll pretty much give you everything you need to know. It'll also give you like a pretty good understanding of why the answers are what they are. So yeah, I definitely recommend Barron's, at least for the chemistry subject test. So if any of you are looking for a very affordable prep book, then let me know, hit me up. Okay, and then like I said, besides like prep books, I think that Khan Academy and also like Bozeman Science, those are 2 like video online resources that I would recommend to just like review content and concepts that you're a little bit unsure about. Now for a study plan. So in the Barron's book, they actually have like a recommended study plan. I did not follow that. So I'll tell you what I actually did, but if you use Barron's, then you can choose to follow theirs. So the way I studied is the very first thing I did was I took an official College Board practice chemistry test, and I just like did it all the way through. I mimicked, you know, realistic testing standards. I gave myself an hour to do it. As I was going through, I just tried my best to answer all the questions. If I was unsure about something, I circled it. But I still made my best guess on every single question, so I didn't leave any question blank. And then when I was done taking the test, while I was scoring it, I went through all the questions, I marked every single question that I got incorrect, and to review the answers, I read through the answer explanations for every single question that I either got wrong or circled because I was unsure of. I would definitely recommend that you use this strategy, because sometimes when you're taking a practice test, you might like guess on a question and you might get it right, but that doesn't mean that you'll get it right in the future. So it's important to just like circle anything that you're even a little bit unsure about, just to make sure that you like really nail down that concept in case it shows up again in the future. Okay, and then also I was kind of like extreme about all the questions that I got wrong or was unsure about. So for all of those questions, I had a little notebook and I wrote out like why I got it wrong and what the right answer was and why the answer was what it was. And I wrote like a paragraph for every single question. So this really helped me to make sure that I was understanding it, and again, to make sure that I was able to get it right the next time around. I just want to say that, like, in my opinion, the most important part of test prep isn't the part where you're doing the practice test, but it's the part where you're understanding what you got wrong and why you got it wrong. Because that's where you're actually improving upon yourself So just like make sure that you're taking that part really seriously. It kind of is very tedious to sit there and write out those paragraphs, but it's worth it in the long run because that is really the best way to improve. Not exactly sure what I got on my very first practice test. I want to say it was probably in like the 600s, low 600s. So that just goes to show you that like even if you don't do super amazing right away on your very first practice test, like don't get discouraged. You can only go up from there. So then after that, I went into this Barron's book and I read through the content review. I read through every single chapter from beginning to end. And here, I'll show you one of my pages. So yeah, as you can see, I just kind of like highlighted, annotated a little bit on the margins, what I needed to know. So as you can see, I put these like sticky notes at certain chapters. So for me, I put sticky notes at places where it was like content that I felt like was kind of difficult to remember, but that you could kind of like cram into short-term memory in a way. So one example is I put a sticky note on this page that has, I don't know if you can read this, but like a summary of qualitative tests for common gases. So this is something that I wasn't really very like familiar with. I don't really feel like we like went over it that much in my AP chemistry class, but I felt like it was something that I could briefly skim over really close before my test and kind of just like put it in short-term memory just right before my test. Okay, so then after I read through all the chapters in Barron's, highlighted, annotated it, I went through all of the practice tests in Barron's. So like I said before, there are 4 practice tests in the book and then 2 online ones. So I went through all of those practice tests and I did the same thing that I did for my very first diagnostic test. So basically I did the test in a realistic setting. I gave myself 1 hour to do it. I tried my best on every question, tried an answer for every question, circled everything I was unsure about, and then very thoroughly went through the answer explanations and wrote down why I got each question wrong and what the right answer was. After I'd done all the Barron's books, I again went back to College Board because again, College Board is the most realistic format to what you're actually gonna have on your real test. So that's why I think it's best to do College Board both at the beginning, just so you know like what the test format is like, and then also at the end, right before you actually take your real test, so that you're prepared for what the actual test will be like. Okay, so this part of my study plan is kind of my like Amanda trick for standardized tests that I've used for really all of my tests. So after I finished all of the practice tests that I had available to me, I redid them. So I feel like most people maybe like just like do a test and then they're done. Like they're not going to do it again. But I feel like it's super helpful, especially for College Board type of tests, to like repeat the same test over and over again until you're getting pretty much all the questions right and until it's like pretty easy for you to get the questions right. So the benefit to this is that College Board often repeats the same questions or the same type of content on their tests. So by repeating practice tests, you get super comfortable with the types of things that will show up. For this, I also think it's important to do a lot of practice tests because if you only have like 2 or 3 practice tests available to you, then you might just like memorize the answer choices without fully understanding the content. But if you're doing a lot of practice tests, then you're gonna like forget it enough that you're not just like memorizing the answer choices, but you're actually like drilling in the content. The like final weeks or days leading up to the exam, definitely like focus a lot on the topics that you're weakest on. So I feel like sometimes it's like tempting to focus more on the questions that you're already good at just to make yourself feel good, but that's not really helping you at all. So just like make sure that you are really focusing on the things that you still struggle with before the exam. All right, and now finally, we're going to go into the tried and true test taking strategies that I have for you. So the night before your exam, personally, I like to go over content. So I usually make like kind of like a cheat sheet of like things that I'm still like kind of struggling with. So I like lay it out in like a nice aesthetically pleasing format so that the night before the test, I can just like read over it again and just like have that fresh in my brain for the exam. And make sure that you eat a good dinner, get 8 hours of sleep. Even if you don't normally sleep 8 hours every single night, I think you want to make sure that you're very well rested for the exam because you want your thinking abilities to be in tip-top shape. Okay, so then for actually taking the test, my first tip is that when you read the question, don't like read the answer choices before you choose what the right answer is because they have like trick answers. in the answer choices. So by reading them, you might like influence your choice. So try to read the question and then just like do your calculations, think about what the right answer is, and then look through the answer choices and see if the answer that you got is in those choices. Also, I think the key to multiple choice tests, like the chemistry subject test, is to not only locate or identify the correct answer, but to eliminate all the other answer choices. Because again, they have trick questions, they have trick answer choices, and just remember that there's only one correct answer choice for every single question, so that means that you should be able to eliminate all the other answer choices other than the one correct answer. And then also, personally, I am pretty conservative when I take tests, so that means that I try to just circle anything that I'm even a little bit uncertain about, just so that I can come back to it and recheck it over, just to like really make sure that I can achieve perfection. Personally, I felt like it was kind of a lot of questions for the time that they give you, so I definitely recommend working pretty briskly on the test. However, I've heard that you're less likely to catch your mistakes the second time around that you check your answers. So I think that it's important to spend enough time on your questions the first time that you're doing your test so that you're having a high enough level of accuracy, but also just work fast enough that you can finish all the questions in 1 hour. All right, so those are all the tips that I have for now for the SAT chemistry test, but if you all still have questions, then definitely leave them in the comments down below, and if I think of things that I may have forgotten to touch on, I'll link them in the description box. And I'm also going to link some study resources that I found very helpful in the description box below. So if you found this video at all helpful, please subscribe and like this video. I'll be posting a lot more college application or test prep related content in the coming weeks. So I'd love to have you join my little YouTube family. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Bye. And gosh. Today I'm going to be doing a video about and then whether the left-hand side statement is because of the right-hand side statement. Was I saying that right?